Tell me if this is you. You hear about the importance of creative testing and that, creative is the new targeting and you need to launch 20, 30 ads every single week. So you put on your creative brain, you produce tons of ads every single week, you launch them into the ad account just to notice that Facebook keeps on spending all the money on the same one or two old ads that you've launched a couple of months ago. Sounds familiar? If so, very, very common. Pretty much everyone that I have calls with regarding AdAmigo AI complains about this exact problem. The first thing that I want to discuss with you is this even a problem or is it a feature, right? And then I want to discuss with you how to combat that issue, how to make sure that your ads get fair spend. What is the exact creative strategy and setup strategy that our AI agent tends to set up the most to combat this problem? Because I have to say at this point, I don't trust my anecdotal experience anymore. I rather trust the AI agent we run on over 2,000 ad accounts that analyzes the entire context of businesses and the ad accounts and then makes creative testing suggestions. I think that is the better case study, and there are certain patterns that emerge that I want to share in this video today to fix this exact problem. So stick around, it's going to be worth it. So first, let's talk about, is this even a problem? Because this is what no one talks about. Everyone obviously knows about this frustration and about this dynamic, and then they sort of feed into that frustration and they try to tell you how terrible this is. And if you would hire them, they will solve their problem for you, right? So there's a little bit of a skewed incentive there sometimes. And I think that's not totally fair. Obviously, Meta as a platform, they are dealing with more and more creative that is being launched. More and more competition against the same advertising space that you can advertise against, and so they need to figure out how do we manage that content more effectively, and how do we map the right content to the right people at the right time and split the pie for advertisers equally, right? And to handle that massive creative volume that people are throwing into the advertising platform, Meta has become a little bit more like TikTok. So there's this infamous Andromeda update that everyone keeps talking about. It's been a while already, so this update is out there for a long time, but it did change some things fundamentally. The first thing that it changed is that the algorithm, at least from our experience and what we can gather, has become more like TikTok, right? So what is TikTok doing? TikTok basically, if you upload a new creative, they have sort of what they consider is a normal like engagement score on your creative, right? So you have people, that you hook in nicely. Then after the hook, you'll obviously disqualify some people. And then, your view retention goes down a little bit. And then, that's kind of what maybe the view retention will look like, the engagement rate will look like over time. And then, of course, you have a certain percentage of people that actually, watch 3 seconds or watch 50% of the video, right? Or watch it in full, right? And so you have all these different metrics on how people are engaging with your creative. And they're benchmarking these metrics against other content that's out there. And if your content is doing better than the average, then they deem your content to be valuable to their community and your content gets accelerated. And so what this is leading to is sort of this era of haves and have-nots, right? So you have people that push out content that might even, organically, they have, let's say, 500,000 followers, and they push out content and they only get a couple of hundred views or a couple of thousand views, right? And then you have others that launch a brand new TikTok account or brand new social media account and all of a sudden go mega viral with their video and have a couple of million views. That obviously is beautiful in a way because it gives everyone the same opportunities. Why that is happening is because subscribers don't matter so much anymore. Attention matters and engagement rates matter. So if you're over-indexing on these things, then your content gets accelerated. So, let's say they put your content out to a first, 200. There's this infamous, if you deal with organic, and I understand we're talking about paid ads here, but there's a lot of parallels, right? So there's this infamous 200 views prison on TikTok and other channels like Instagram as well, where you always push a video out and you always get 200 views. That's not the problem, but you never go beyond that, right? So this infamous 200 view jail. What they're doing is, you push your content out there. Pretty much every content you push, it can be terrible content, is going to get 200 views. They measure your engagement rates across all these different KPIs. And if it's over indexing against that cohort, they keep accelerating you further to another, let's say, 2,000 people. And if it keeps over indexing, they accelerate you further to another 5,000 people and another 10,000 people, and so on and so forth. And so your content can go mega viral if you keep over indexing on these engagement rates, right? And then after a while, you might slow down because you've sort of saturated the audience that is really interested in this kind of content, and your engagement rates go down. And then overall, the creative sort of fades out. So this is what's happening. This is, I think, what's very important to understand. So when you talk about ads and content, there's really two things. You want to over-index on engagement scores, and it's very common for content to be tested against a small cohort, and then it gets accelerated out. And this dynamic also happens in paid ads, right? So when you launch a new ad, let's say you have one ad set, one massive ad set, right? And within that ad set, you have a bunch of different ads, right? Opa, there you go. Okay, now someone messed it up. There you go. So you have a bunch of different ads in this ad set, okay? So in this case, 4, right? So the thing is, if you now, so let's say this is like your old legacy ad that's getting tons of clicks, and those are new ads that you've launched. And then there's this one new ad that you literally just launched, right? And so all the spend keeps going into this ad right here. And so you launch this new ad. What's going to happen? And that I can guarantee. There's going to be a few hundred views that you will get on this new ad creative. No matter how small the spend here and no matter how high the spend here, right? So if you spend, let's say, only $20 on the ad set level, then let's say this ad is cannibalizing all the spend, but you're going to get 200, 300, 400 views and impressions or clicks even, perhaps, right, on this ad creative that you just launched. If you are not over-indexing on these engagement rates, your creative is not going to get accelerated further. In paid ad terms, it means it will not spend more money. And so this is why a lot of creatives, when you launch them into an ad set, they sort of have a little bit of reach and then they die down. And they might even die down to the extent where they don't spend a single dollar, right? So this is the meta algorithm measuring your engagement rates, comparing it to engagement rates also on other ad creatives, and then making a decision whether a creative deserves to be accelerated or not. What they obviously also try to do is figure out scale and so on, right? How scalable is an ad creative? So sometimes you see very good ad creatives just not getting more spent. They are getting spent, but they're not getting more spent. And this is kind of the algorithm, figuring out at some point, will it sustain these above average engagement scores even at higher scale? And maybe if that's flattening off, it does not, right? So this is just, a little bit of sort of just looking into the algorithm to explain what is happening behind the curtains and how can we explain what is happening. And what that also means is that in many cases, if your creative is not getting a lot of spend, it's on purpose because Facebook looked at the engagement rates and they're bad. And so you might be better off not complaining about it and accepting it and going back to the drawing board and producing more creative. And the right creative and good creative that is over-indexing on these scores is going to get accelerated out and will spend and will get more spend. And we see that happening all the time, that even those high legacy, rich history ads will get overtaken and spent if you launch this new magical ad that just does so much better. So it does happen. So what many advertisers say is, look, I don't care. I just have one ad set and I keep dumping ads into it. And if the algorithm likes the ad, it will accelerate it and it's going to give more spend. And if not, it's what it is. And I design another number of ads, right? And they're only limited by the 50 ads per ad set restriction. Then they launch a new ad set and keep pumping new ads into those as well. So that's one way of going about it. So this is that, right? So I would say in many cases that your ads are not getting enough spend is a feature, it's not a bug. And it's a signal that your creative didn't over-index on engagement rates. Where it gets frustrating for a lot of advertisers, and where putting in a little bit of a counterweight makes sense, is that this decision, which ad deserves to be accelerated and which ad does not deserve to be accelerated, sometimes gets made very, very quickly. So like I mentioned, 200, 300, 400 impressions on Facebook, that's sometimes it's like $3 and spend, $4 and spend. But your average cost per purchase is 50. And so it never even had a chance in terms of spend to drive a purchase, because it never even spent anywhere close to $50, right? And I get that. And this is tied to this next problem, that a lot of this decision making, which creative gets accelerated and which a creative does not get accelerated, is based on engagement rates, not necessarily conversion rates and ROI. And so if an ad is very high converting because it's very, for example, for us, for AdAmigo AI, an ad where we talk about media buying optimizations and very like geeky, detailed things might convert incredibly well because it's a very interesting piece of content for our exact target audience, but it will have bad engagement rates because I'm not dancing on TikTok, right? So engagement doesn't mean conversion. And so using that as an early indicator to understand which creatives should get accelerated can be problematic. And so, although I do think that the algorithm in many cases makes very, very good decisions, it does make sense to figure out an in-between where you leave it to the algorithm, but you also kind of force a little bit of spend on it. And so the strategy, or the campaign strategy that has wildly been adopted for this approach, and I have not really seen it change much over the last year and a half, I would say, is that you end up having a testing campaign and you end up having a scaling campaign. And in the testing campaign, what you do is whenever you have new ad creatives, you launch a new designated testing ad set. The budget should be 1x your cost per purchase or cost per lead as a daily budget, right? Give or take. So let's say you spend $50 per purchase on average, then $50 daily budget is a good budget, so that within 4 to 5 days, you really, really have enough statistical relevance in terms of spend and in terms of days passed to make a solid decision. If you cannot afford to spend that much on just creative testing alone, then 1/3 your cost per purchase or cost per lead is the minimum budget I would dedicate towards a creative testing ad set, so that every 3 days it's spent enough to drive a conversion. It's not ideal, but it is enough, because you typically want to run a test for somewhere around 4 to 7 days. And so by that time, you've spent around 2 times the cost per purchase. So something should have happened here, right? And so it's somewhat of a statistically relevant test, you could argue, right? So that's kind of the minimum budget that I would go for. But obviously, the higher, the better. Overall, if you look at sort of entire strategy, right, you should probably have something like 20% budgets on creative testing and 80% on creative scaling, right? So that typically tends to be the split, so that if you waste a lot of money on testing, it doesn't hurt core performance that you're driving on the scaling campaign, right? So yeah, that's basically the creative testing ad set. On the ad sets itself, I like to keep them very open. So I have Advantage plus targeting typically, or actually when I say this is us observing what AdAmigo is doing with our recommendation engine right here for our customers. And so typically Advantage plus tends to be the approach. And then you want to try to cluster your ad creatives in a way that it makes sense, right? So if you have, let's say, 10 new ad creatives, and 5 are promoting one product and 5 are promoting another product, then obviously putting them all into one ad set might not be the most representative thing. So you want to have all ads that promote one product in one ad set and all ads that promote another product in another creative testing ad set. That is one approach to split it. Another approach to split it that I find very important and not talked about often is the persona split. So if you have creatives that are messaging to a specific persona and other creatives messaging to another persona, I would not ever mix those creatives into the same audience. Sorry. Ever is a nonsense. That's not a good statement. But try to avoid it, because you wanna you want to compound a lot of learning on an ad set level in terms of conversions, and you want that learning to be clean. So if you have an audience that only goes after, let's take AdAmigo as an example, only goes after e-commerce business owners and not agency owners, right? Then we have a lot of data of customers that sign up that are e-commerce owners, and that's like clean data, so quality data, and then over time also quantitative data. And it accelerates. If you have a lot of different audiences and messaging angles you're trying to address in the same audience, you have a lot of different learnings fragmented. So that tends to not drive that good results. So that's always what I would do as well. So if you have different messaging angles against different target audiences, split those up as well. So those are the lines I would split those up against. And then also, let's say you have one video creative with 5 different hooks, where the first 3-4 seconds are different. So that makes sense to bundle in one ad set, for example, right? Because it's the same video, just different hook testing. So that's a beautiful example of bundling this in one ad set. So yeah, that's kind of the strategy. And then what I would do, and what we in general see the AI also do, is if now this creative test works incredibly well, right? And let's say you have like a bunch of ads in there, right? And there's now one that does incredibly well. Obviously, over time, kill the losers that spend money without driving results. That will automatically have more spend from the ad set level go to this one high performing ad. And so you automatically scale this ad, which should also improve overall ad set performance because you're reducing budget waste on the other ad sets, other ads, right? And then, don't kill it. Because you say, okay, creative test over and let's kill it. If it's working well, this ad set that is, obviously go ahead and scale budgets. And then what you can do is you can duplicate this working ad into your scaling campaign. The scaling campaign, typically, what we see AdAmigo do is a CBO campaign. And then you have ad sets inside clustered by different personas or different product categories or different market segments. Really depends on the client that AdAmigo is advertising for. And then it duplicates the ad into the respective ad set to keep feeding you ads into those ad sets. Note obviously that you have a limit of 50 ads per ad set. So every now and then we see AdAmigo sometimes having to clean up and delete ads that never got any spend or whatever, or launch a new ad set to make space for new ads to launch into the CBO campaign. So yeah, that tends to be the setup. So why certain ads are getting all the spend, why this is not necessarily a bad thing, but there's caveats, which is decisions are made on engagement metrics and they're made rather quickly. And so it makes sense to create designated creative ad sets, creative testing ad sets, launch those ads clustered into those ad sets, clustered against persona, market that you're advertising in, a product that you're advertising for, and then kill the losers, which automatically scales the winners, increase budgets, and duplicate winners into the creative or into the scaling campaign. And so that way you force spend on these ads, get learnings, and then execute on those learnings. But overall, you're risking a smaller fraction of your overall budgets while your scaling campaign carries performance. So that tends to be a very, very fail-safe approach for creative testing, managing ads that are spending too much and too little. Obviously, one last thing to close things off. Obviously, account hygiene is very important. So you should always have some form of automation, whether that's our automations, you see here custom agents, or you have our media buying agent, AI agent that is, managing and observing your ad account, and then it's pausing ads and ad sets that are, not doing so well, as you can see right here, right? So it will pause ads and ad sets that are overspending and then overall improve performance. So you should do that, of course, either manually or have an AI agent do that for you. And so if you see this ad right here, which is a legacy ad, spending ridiculous amounts of spend, but performance is unprofitable for last 3, 7, and 14 days, let's say, then of course it's always time to kill those ads. And what that will do is it will naturally redistribute budgets into the other ads that you have inside the ad set. And so by downscaling and losing ad, you always scale the other remaining ads. And so that obviously will also ensure more spend going into your ad creative. So thought I'd say that to close things off. Cool. Hope this was super helpful. A little bit of like a session here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask below. I'll make sure to answer as much as I can. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you around in the next video. Obviously, leave a subscribe. And if you want to have more of this content, and let me know if there's anything else that I should record and that I should help with. And I'll go ahead and record that content right away. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.